first meeting in a line of 6 meetings for the 2023 Trinity County Hazard Mitigation Plan update. And so we want to hit 5 different communities across the county so that we can get public input on the planning process and what goes into our hazard mitigation plan. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing what we're required to put in the plan, what we're planning to put in the document, and also the information that we've gotten so far from the public survey. And then, so after we go over this presentation, I'm going to pass around some materials, so a public survey and then 2 activities if you'd like to do a fun activity about promoting hazard mitigation in the county. So without further ado, sorry, hold on. There you go. So what is a hazard mitigation plan? So in the past few weeks in promoting these meetings and the public survey, we've been getting a lot of questions on like, what is the point of this document? You know, why should I care about this? Why should I engage? So the hazard mitigation plan is supposed to account for the various natural hazards which can occur within a jurisdiction. So what natural hazards can happen here within the county? So we're looking at, you know, potential for dam failure, the drought that we've been experiencing, evaluating for wildfire risk. So all of those hazards are evaluated within the hazard mitigation plan. And the intent of the document is to, through reviewing like technical reports, studies, other plans, and through public outreach like this, to create meaningful mitigation measures for those hazards. So ways that we can reduce the threat or risk of a hazard either completely or in some part to promote safety in our communities. And we'll go into a little bit more later on what a mitigation looks like and an example of a mitigation that's in our existing hazard mitigation plan. So another question that we get a lot is, well, why are we bothering to update it? So our last plan, the 2015 plan, was adopted in September 2016 by our County Board of Supervisors. And, you know, it accounts for the various hazards within the county. It has mitigations. So people ask, well, why do we need to update it again? You know, we had wildfires then, we have wildfires now. What gives? So one of the main reasons why, or actually 3, the first is we want to attain compliance with the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. So basically, we are supposed to update the plan every 5 years. So it's been a few more than 5 years since 2015, 2016. So we're now on this plan update process to bring ourselves into compliance with that requirement. The second reason, and this kind of goes into the legal requirement as well, there are certain FEMA disaster recovery monies that are not available to this jurisdiction unless we have an adopted hazard mitigation plan that is compliant with our state and federal code. So we want to update this so that we can be eligible for those monies. And so that's, for example, there's some post-wildfire recovery money or building resilient infrastructure and communities funding that would only be possible if we are able to get this plan adopted and then approved by FEMA and the state. Finally, and this is the reason I like to promote the most, we need to have a good idea of what the various hazards are of the county, and not just that they exist, but you know what portions of the county are most impacted by them, how much they're impacted by these hazards, and we need to come up with effective mitigation measures or solutions to these hazards. It's important that we update every few years so we can reevaluate the mitigations that we have currently, see if we did anything actionable with them. If we did they work? If we didn't, why didn't we? Do we need to develop new mitigation measures? And so that's what this process is supposed to be doing. So what are the requirements of the plan? So we discussed that it's required that we have a plan, but can we just say, you know, here are some hazards, here are some solutions, and that's good? No, unfortunately not. It's a little bit more in depth of a process than that. So I'm going to quickly go over the main points of what needs to be in this plan. So The first part, the planning process, we are currently engaged in. So let's see, 3, 4, 5, us 6 in the room are in the process of checking, or at least doing a partial check for the planning engagement process. So this is not supposed to be, somebody holed up in their office and they spend a 40-hour work week typing out a new plan. This is supposed to be a collection of knowledge. So like I said earlier, we're going to be leaning on as many technical documents as we can, but equally important, we want to understand the perspective and experiences of community members, and we want to incorporate that into the plan document as well. Part of the plan development in the mitigations development is prioritizing those mitigations. So if we have some mitigations that we understand could be effective in reducing risk, and if we have public input saying, well, we really want this to happen more than that, then that will impact the prioritization of those mitigations within the plan. So second, the risk assessment. So this is oftentimes seen more of the daunting part of the plan. So that's looking at all of the different hazards and, basically trying to put everything you can on those hazards and how they impact the county. So that is, first understanding which hazards do impact the county, then understanding what our definition for them are, where they occur. So some hazards occur across the county. So like most recently, drought. But other hazards are reduced in different parts of the county, such as risk of dam failure or earthquake risk, given where fault lines are. Third in the process, we want to understand what are previous occurrences of this hazard and what their impacts were, what we anticipate future occurrences of the hazard to be, and then finally understanding who is most vulnerable and what the impacts of those hazards are. So that's everything that goes into the risk assessment. FEMA calls out specifically NFIP structures, so that's National Flood Insurance Program structures, because they manage that program. There's several times within the requirements where they call it out specifically. We've been working directly with the floodplain manager to make sure that we meet that requirement and account for all structures within the floodplain within our analysis. But as a step back, I just wanted to take a moment and say, okay, there are some fun graphics on the slide, and we've kind of accounted for some of the hazards, but exactly what is going to be evaluated within the risk assessment. So we have 10 separate hazard types that are currently evaluated within the 2015-2016 hazard mitigation plan. And in our current update, we're including all of them. Something that stands out is dam failure and widespread infectious disease, as well as loss of communication. So those aren't required by FEMA, but given public input that we've gotten, and given the fact that we have dams within the county, and because there was concern for widespread infectious disease and loss of communication, those hazard profiles are within the risk assessment, and there have been mitigations to reduce the impact of these hazards on the community as well. And please, anyone, if you want to interrupt or ask questions, please do so. Okay, so the fun part, mitigation. So the mitigation is not supposed to just be like a pie in the sky idea. FEMA wants us to have a strategy, understand who is going to be the responsible agency for that strategy, any possible partners, understanding what the priority of that mitigation action is, understanding, is it going to be an expensive or non-expensive mitigation measure, and when the mitigation was created, and then when we're looking to implement that action. So in the existing plan, for example, there is reference to the Firewise communities within the county, and saying that, it is, I believe, county planning or the BOS that is the responsible agency, but that they should work with the Trinity County Fire Safe Council and the Fire Chiefs Association in order to increase Firewise communities within the county. So that's something that we see in the current plan, and that we can kind of look to for reference when building new mitigation measures. And in the next slide, I'll go over an example of a mitigation measure, but I felt like it tied in a bit to the maintenance aspect of the plan. So like I referenced a few times, we're a little behind in the plan update schedule. We should have updated the plan a little while ago at this point. The way that FEMA wants this plan update process to be is, even though we only get a new adopted plan every 5 years, the process is supposed to be continuous. So we're constantly reaching out to the public and understanding what the concerns are. And we are taking that knowledge and we are already building the next plan update. So we are going to devise ways to include and to sustain public engagement over the next 5 years after this plan. Yeah.
When you say we, is this the Fire Safe Council, or is this RCD, or is this, what was the we?
So the we is a partnership between the Fire Safe Council, RCD, and Trinity County Office of Emergency Services.
Perfect.
So we're all devising a way that we can keep this train going, no stops, because we want to make sure that going forward, the public is in the know of the process and that we are increasing, our reach, because we understand now that there are some gaps in our outreach and we really want to seal that up and better serve the public. Okay, so what is a mitigation? I kind of spoke to an example before regarding the Firewise communities, but here's the general structure of how a mitigation is formed in the existing plan. So there's about 4 or 5 goals such as significantly reduce injuries and loss of life. So that's a general goal of the hazard mitigation plan. So how are we going to reach that goal is by having specific mitigation actions. So I pulled some hazards and their corresponding actions for this goal 1. So for example, encourage the establishment of a water source identification system. It's funny, we were talking about that before the meeting. And a multi-hazard goal, which is explore the feasibility of an early notification system. So part of the plan update is going to be evaluating actions like this and say, did we actually do this? If we did, was it effective? Are there ways to improve? Is this a mitigation measure or action that we want to keep in the next plan? So the last 3 things that are requirements are, as I said earlier, that we continue this update process. So we have set ourselves up for success, that we will meet the next update deadline, and that we are continuously engaging members of the public throughout the next 5 years. And finally, the adoption of the plan. So prior to it being able to be approved by FEMA, our jurisdictions of Trinity County's Board of Supervisors would need to adopt the plan and show a commitment to following the plan and working towards achieving the mitigation measures. And so this final bullet point is applicable to jurisdictions like ours, which have dams which could potentially be of high hazard potential. So this isn't a requirement from FEMA, but if we want to be eligible for funding regarding projects for high hazard potential dams, we would need a section to speak to the existing dams within our county. So that's one of the reasons why we have the dam failure hazard profile and analysis within the hazard mitigation plan. So now that we understand what the plan is, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on what public input we've gotten so far in this plan update cycle. So last fall, 2022, the Fire Safe Council, conducted a series of surveys, which is the same survey that we're going to ask you to complete tonight, to better understand what Trinity County's community perception of risk was. So people were able to rate different forms of hazards and give them like a no threat to very high threat ranking. And so based off of those responses, we were able to tabulate it. So saying if some hazard had like a high ranking, it would be a 4. and then tabulating all that up. This pie chart shows which hazards the community finds to be the highest risk. So in order: wildfire, drought, major road closures, loss of communications, and severe weather. So this is important to us in understanding how we want to prioritize mitigation measures and to better understand which parts of the county have higher perception of risk for which forms of hazards. So this information will be incorporated within the plan and help us better shape the plan. So that's the presentation itself. I wanted to end it by saying thank you for coming out. We're really excited to be pushing this project forward. We've been getting a lot of community feedback that this needs to be done, so we really want to tackle it with full force. And I will pass around the survey, but I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions or comments or anything they wanted to add.
Doesn't affect us. I'm just kind of curious about the dam. So is it is labeled as a high hazard, or is it just like one of those potential risk categories that because of the dam failure, the downstream would be a high hazard? And then my next, I guess, point to that is, are you looking forward to a time that it could be removed and replaced? Just because I know most dams do have a life expectancy. I think what 80 to 100 years is kind of what they think. So, you know, even looking to the idea of the removal of the dam, you know, something like the Klamath, it could be. Is that something that's in the ideas, or is it kind of something, because I don't know how you mitigate the removal of the dam. So I don't know, I'm just kind of curious.
No, I appreciate the question. So to the first question, it is in like the instance of a dam failure, it's a high hazard potential. We haven't been discussing the removal of dams in the current risk assessment or mitigation, but I appreciate the conversation, and we're recording this meeting. So any like recommendations or suggestions or anything, I will be listening to it and considering it.
It does apply for us. The studies and the paperwork shows like a Ewing Dam breach. What's I think 9.5 feet of water at high school. I'm just shooting from the hip on numbers. Yeah, there is. So we actually have a emergency action plan given to us through the water board. Water works, water department.
Because they have their mitigation plan.
Yeah.
How much do you collaborate with TIPA on line setbacks for mitigation measures with some of the fire breaks that are already in place to kind of, you know, keep them in line together so that way you're not doubling up?
So we're currently in talks with TPUD to potentially submit an annex to this plan. So we would be sharing information, making sure there's no like duplication of work. But ideally, we would like them to be like would like this to be a multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan, and for us to be evaluating their work too.
At-risk populations, high heat, air quality. I'm just kind of curious, like in Hayfork specifically, are there shelters that people can go to for, during the middle of the winter to see heat, or during the middle of summer to see cold? Just because it seems like it's starting to go a little more variable, especially with the seasons we've had.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with shelter names off the top of my head, but I definitely appreciate that feedback.
We do have shelter locations, set up through Red Cross. OES would be the ones that set the shelter up before Red Cross there for an evacuation.
But only in
heating, and if it's for like a heating center or a cooling center. Right now, OES is in the process of trying to help the fairgrounds with funding, getting grants to upgrade. They would either upgrade this building or upgrade the dance that they call to turn that into a center. Now, we're kind of working with Hayfork Fire because they have, and that's kind of will be more of my go-to because you guys have better, be able to staff it better. And that was one of the trips that I was trying to get here earlier so we can test and test this morning. Trying to reach out to the guy, hey, because I want to look at what we can do there, because if we can put those funds to a building that's, already has generator power, And then through public health emergency preparedness, we can provide either cooling or heating systems. We work in conjunction with them to
We'd also be hopeful that the cooling system would have air filtration, so you could positively push out the
Definitely.
wildfire smoke.
Yes, definitely, and that's what they're considered clean air stations. We set them up in Willow Creek during the Six Rivers fire. We set them up at the schools to keep the schools going. So, yeah, all of these items are in the process, you know, and it's just locating the best resource and the best use for the systems to, you know, the biggest issue that we always run into is staffing. You know, somebody's got to be there through this, and HHS staff can only do it so much.
Well, the better we get federal dollars to pay for it.
Yeah, well, that's
That's part of the process.
yeah, it is. You know, they like to purchase equipment. They really don't like to purchase wages. Staff.
Interrupt for a minute, I guess. I'm on the fair board here, and we had a run in the last fire here on Post Mountain with the manager here. Basically, they made this an evacuation spot without even checking in with anybody at the fair board. She came down here and moved in with bells on and pulled it off. And then I'm not sure who the entity was that said, listen, that was improper, you can't do that. They pulled the people out of here and started putting them in hotels. And it was already started. And that's part of what we're talking about here, is mitigation, getting this stuff straightened out. One of the things I'll add is the fairgrounds has put in 1 or 2 generators now, having trouble getting them going. They might be trying to get a hold of you to help with that. And the other one that a lot of people don't realize about here is Caltrans set up this yard over here as an evacuation center. I mean, it's a fire center. They got probably the biggest generator in town right now. They could run that whole compound, that generator. I worked with them before I come retired. They set that up as a major setup for emergencies, what have you. They did.
I'm wondering why they haven't reached. I mean, I don't know if they've reached out to
They
county.
use it for all the mechanical on the fires.
Yeah,
They pay that to come in there. Weaverville set their yard up the same way, all those buildings and that big generator. So the use is there, there's a spot to go to.
okay.
It's probably the only 2 spots other than any school districts that have done it.
Yeah.
Hoodburn Ranch is in the process of doing that.
For their
Generators so that people can come in, because in my opinion, looking at your wheel up there, I don't think power outage is high enough on the list. Because when you're out in these remote areas without power, you have no water. And so you don't have a generator to do it. And I'm in that issue out there. I feel that the Hayfork fire tank out there, we have others around the community, but this power outage is a big deal, winter and summer fires. I think it should be like number 2 or 3.
And I think it's something, not to cut in, but I agree. I think it's something that is much easier to come up with mitigation and things we can do than drought.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's great droughts up there, but what can we really do about drought? What we can do is start working, he touched on it, finding a way to incorporate our fuel reduction projects into power line clearances, start using those as brakes, finding ways to up the power outage, because we've also ran into with power outages, one of our highest thing is Eschaton. They don't have generators. Well, we were actually running by day 3, we were running one after the other patients to the hospital just because they were full, because there was no power.
Taken care of in the schools.
Yes.
If the schools had proper generators, there would be your evacuation.
And that just is a potential. I do agree with Dennis here on bringing that up to higher into our issues, at least in our local area. I can't speak for other areas, but anybody on home oxygen, get into the severe weather side of things, and you might not be getting fuel deliveries out there. You know, so I would say power outages is a pretty big one.
On your fuel breaks, what I'd like to add, I've been harping about this for years. Very rarely, if ever, is there any money put into the grants to do these fuel breaks to maintain. And so what we've done is we've created a haul cost for these fuel breaks. Because every time you go to masticator and do it, the science is behind this. It just comes back like a blue number. So in the end, we're actually probably making it worse.
By not setting up maintenance follow.
We don't set up a 5 to 10 year maintenance plan on every one of these grants to do these fuel breaks.
I tried going up to the creek off the forest road, trying to make it to the mountain. I couldn't make it 2 miles up the path because the grass got so bad, because they did a backburn back in the 2015 fire, but nothing's been maintained since then. So now the entire trail's completely overgrown.
And we got a lot of money going through watershed, RCD, to do these fuel breaks. And it's really going in heavily in mastication, and it's moving back. Mastication does a great job temporarily, but 5 years.
The Board of Supervisors, I think last year actually had a presentation by a fuel company that was hoping to look for actually utilizing some of the wood pulp and chippy materials that were coming out of these areas to turn it into actual, electricity, or pelletize it and ship it off to China, which is one of the other things that they use for electricity. I mean, is that possible? One of those things, because, trying to actually, we know where these areas that need to be cut. It's a bunch of small material that's not going to be usable for logging, like something that actually can be used for that, because at least the breaks are already there rather than looking at monument.
So on that, I did see a grant recently, any small business starting up, trying to use bio material on fuel reductions. I'm not sure where I saw it.
It's a CAL FIRE grant, and the Watershed Research and Training Center has looked into biomass quite a lot. They have a whole department that just has done fiscal analysis for biomass in Trinity County, but also more regionally. The current issue of Trinity County is the hauling distance to the generator. So there are discussions, and I think we'll start to see some subsidizing for the haulers over the next few years, because they're going to haul the SPI. They're going to haul down into the Central Valley to get rid of their chips, to get rid of the sawdust and burn it up in energy. But that's most of like the prohibitive process right now, is having to pay the haulers and the current price of diesel haul it. But we're trying.
Obviously.
But if a small business wants to get stood up under CAL FIRE,
That was my thought, is building Presto logs, right? Somebody needs to start doing something. I know these are small drops in the hat, but it starts a process.
Yeah.
And obviously, Mr. Rourke sitting next to me had influence on my childhood, because I've been harping on this. I don't have the detailed information or experience that he has, but we are doing our community a huge disservice if we don't take the lines that we put in for monument and manage them and maintain them and keep them as a buffer zone, even if that means minor ecological or disturbance to the land, or trying to think of a nice way to phrase this. The cost of disturbing the frogs is worth the protection it gives the whole community if we can minimize and use the ground we gained. Because when you think about what we've had between the Stafford, the rail, and 2015 fires, and now the monument, there's only a little window up the 08 Plumber Peak area where town hasn't been wrapped in the last 8 or 9 years. And if you go look at 2015 area, it's ready to burn again because we haven't maintained it. And finding some way to make that sustainable finding a way to make something like that sustainable, where when we gain ground during a fire, that we don't have to pay the cost to put it back in. It's just maintenance cost post that, I think would be.
I would almost argue that the soil disturbance would be less by continuing maintenance rather than having CAL FIRE come in with tractors right before it and not knowing where to plow. So at least having it done before, but also provide wildlife breaks too. I mean, there's a couple other things that you could argue about, just like the long-term implications of it, but then also being able to set up with TPA, with CAL FIRE and Forestry Service, all bricks in one kind of area. Because if all of a sudden you're saying, hey, there was an old forestry road here back in the 1980s that we could have used, rather than all of a sudden going through and plowing the ridge line like they have been, which I completely understand. I mean, I still remember Monument looking out my window and all of a sudden having a CAL FIRE tractor, doing ends over the hill. I appreciate it, but could they have done it better with a little bit more time? Maybe. So.
And a lot of what during Monument we were opening up was going back and getting old timer knowledge from well before my time, where dozer lines had been put in there before and not maintained.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying checkerboard the whole forest. I think we've learned, at least in our small community, we've learned you don't stop a fire in the forest and draw a circle around a large fire. You draw a circle around the town, let the large fire go around it. It's at this point, it seems like it's more cost effective. So if we allow the circle of dozer lines around town with some check lines and some contingency. So sort of a buffer zone of, we'll say, you know, a mile into the timberland to the foot of the slope, say, or the transition of fuels. And we kept that area managed. I think in one large incident, it would more than pay for cost it took to maintain.
And do you feel that you're being heard right now, that
No.
this is?
Not at all.
What, and I'll speak a little
That's
bit.
where I
Wait,
stand.
yes, I think we're heard. And people go, uh-huh, that's great. And that's where it ends. That there's never any actionable, I'll have people in Forest Service say, you're right, that is, you know, totally, we should do that. That's where it dies. I hear that it's a great idea, everybody supports it, but there's that. Nobody knows how to go from, yeah, we think it's a good idea, to actually making a plan, which is, in my opinion, setting precedents. This hasn't been done anywhere else. So everybody's kind of wary to take the first steps, liability, risk, oh my, you know.
This is the first year, this last fire, that we were told, those of us that are out causing problems, that they weren't gonna be destroying the firelights with logs and brush and everything. And I have not seen where that's the case.
They destroyed mine and drink water.
Yeah.
They came back when they came back
Literally
through
in
and they.
public meetings during these fires said they weren't gonna do that this time. Now we're sitting here talking about it. And this whole deal, as I talked to you before yesterday, this morning, this evening, this is about USFS Forest Service, period. And there's nobody here from the Forest Service, which I find interesting. And I feel very strongly about a few of these things, like Dobbins, all these areas that they laid out timber sales, never sold. Now all that timber's down on the ground and falling over dead. Sequa, Fish, Leroy bounced around on that, where you can't go into these SOZ zones and take out that material. In my neighborhood alone, all the way to Wildwood Road, all over here in my Hayfork, all this down timber, now it's gonna get worse after halfway ridge and everything. We should be pushing to turn loose the loggers in this ground. The hell with the SMZ zone, if it's a dead tree, take it, get it out of here. And we've got to start relaxing those standards. We're gonna have a few people whine about that. But the fact is, if we don't do it, this is only gonna get way worse than it already is. When you drive down Buckhorn right now, I asked my dad this, he's damn near 100 years old now. I said, what do you see when you drive down Buckhorn? Well, I don't know, what are you getting at? I said, do you see any dirt? All you see is knob cone and brush cone back. That is our next event that you will see from doing. We've made a ball up there. And I see it happening here, same thing. Every fuel break that's went in here has not been maintained without fail. So, in my opinion, that's a waste of money. We're not gonna maintain it.
Lucky Trail's been an accessible road. We use it for fire spotting and use it for access for lightning. It gives us the back access to Thompson Peak, which is way quicker than driving all the way around up the creek. shut that down and take trapped that and with a gate at the end of it and made it impassable for fire engines. I will say I brought it up to our local Forest Service guy and was like, hey, this is a safety issue here. Like, that's my main spotting. You get up there, I can see the whole valley. We pick up at least 2 lightning fires a year. 2 days later, he took a dozer up there and opened it. So small individual things with pressure seem like they get done, but building a policy that opens this up. I mean, and I don't know how to say it tactfully, except that I feel like they're scared of the Sierra Foundation so much that they won't move. That, and I make the Sierra, I don't. It's,
Right.
but you know, they're so afraid of being sued and tied up in litigation that they're afraid to make any move. This gentleman brought up a great idea about using Shasta Trinity or maybe our neck of the woods as a demonstration for us to put into practice ideas that may not be used elsewhere, and let us be the guinea pig for it. Opening up to more salvage logging, you know, with maybe some minor restrictions, but not this just making it impossible to do. Or
Turning a
it's
fire
possible
break
to
into a
do.
mountain biking road. And
Yeah.
there's multiple other things that demonstration before show mixed use between recreation and also safety. Because right now we're lacking in recreation.
So, I've got 2 things. So, one, Skylar, let's, agendize this topic at the next fire safe council meeting.
Okay.
One of the successes, I don't know if it's been shared widely enough. I don't know if you guys talk much with Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department. They're having success with SPI. So they asked SPI built a field break between SPI lands and Trinity Center. And Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department asked, can you keep that open? Can you leave it open? SPI's answer was, can you buy me a gate? They said, we will keep it open and maintain it if you buy us a gate. And they did. And so,
I'll just speak to you though, you look at the maps up there, that is a chunk of. It's hard to get continuity up
correct.
there, whereas here, we have continuity. It's all federal Forest Service land around us.
So you mix, so, and
So,
Wildwood Road, then you mix in with SPI. Check with board. But the major landholder in Trinity County is who? It's Forest Service.
people,
Forest Service. They hold more acreage than anybody in the county.
Yep.
And they're not at these meetings, and they don't care what's going on at these meetings. And when you go to their fire meetings, you are surrounded by 2 big dudes in Stetsons and white boots because you're causing a problem, bringing up points going on. I say as far as the fire insurance, fire safe councils, whatever, if we don't get this problem solved, managing fire with fire between August and November, we're fighting a losing battle that we can't touch. That has to be fixed. And they tell you, just like last year, we're not managing the fire. BS. We're watching it go on. Everybody is. And as I said earlier in the meeting, it is leaking roof syndrome. Everybody comes out of the woodwork, raise hell, whether during a fire, you know, it's all over the rain hits. Everybody goes away till the next fire lights. Nobody's out there. Got 3 people here. And you should have 20 here.
at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last rain Foresters did here, there was 15, 20 people here. And it got pretty rowdy.
You and I were at the one before that.
And so,
Yeah.
and a lot of people were upset with what was going on, but it didn't really accomplish it. While we're at it, the water tank came up in tenders. In mitigation, we're planning for how you're gonna fight a fire or an issue. And I'm talking mostly fire. Are you gonna be mapping all of your water tender spots and your tanks and who has access to that water? Because that becomes an issue.
But the other fun thing we have in Hayfork too is now all our fire hydrants have the same water pressure. And so some of them you can't even access.
Yeah, but we're running into, I hear where he's going. I have fire water draftable on my property, and next thing I know, I have private yahoos drafting because we publicized
Well, and like, I have a 5,000 gallon tank, it's a Hayfork fire tank that I keep full of my well.
Mhm.
I use it for one little small garden area and it's there for fire.
Yeah.
That's Hayfork Fires, and when that went in with the past chief, we talked a lot about who has access to that water, because that's there for the peanut community.
Yeah.
Forest Service says they can commandeer that water. I wish them luck.
Mm. Well, so I don't know about like that side of it, but as far as like the data that comes to us, is it shared with our partners for fire mitigation? Yes. Is it shared with the public? No. So it would be shared with the volunteer fire departments, it'd be shared with incoming fire departments that are up here trying to do the work. And so it wouldn't be shared with Joe Schmo on the street, right? So that would be our protection level. So if the Forest Service asked us for that data, we would provide it.
Yeah, see, my issue is, when you're surrounded by Forest Service land, these, most all these satellite tanks are.
Yeah.
Ours in particular really is. If you get a fire up on Forest Service and then they feel they can come in and do a tender.
Yeah.
Under most instances, I would be fine with that. Don't mind paying the power bill on the water. But if they abuse it and tear it up, and then cause a backfire that comes down and gets into the peanut community, and Hayfork Fire doesn't have that water, now that's an issue.
Yeah.
And they're taking the water that's set up to defend homes.
Right.
Yes,
That's where I get into a philosophical issue.
that's where.
It's to
the
defend
mitigation-
homes, and Forest Service won't defend homes. They are not allowed to do, they can do wildfire threat protection. But then we'll say they can defend a home, but they can't fight a structure fire.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so
So I think that comes to some of the relationships, right, between Hayfork Fire, Peanut Community, and the Forest
Well, that
Service,
part's
but
good. It's when we tangle with the Forest Service, comes the problem.
Yeah.
When you bring that up with the Forest Service, they don't want to hear it. The Rourke Ranch just had an issue out here, the lightning strike. Not sure everybody's aware of it,
Mhm.
but they thought it was CAL FIRE dipping in the Salt Creek in the pump hole that has a rope going across it with a foot valve in it. Never contacted anybody. If they'd have hooked up on that and power line, we'd have been reading about it in 3 or 4 states. Then they found out later that it was a Forest Service helicopter unit, when we have sewer ponds right out here, which should be part of this mitigation. Because in the past, they had dipped out of the sewer ponds, but now all of a sudden they dipped out of Salt Creek on private property. Well, and in the mitigation, should we be putting into that mitigation, the sewer ponds, doing reservoir, what the process is to getting that water?
Yeah.
Whether they pay for it, don't pay for it, because I know with the water district, when I worked for them, it was an issue. They would start dipping out a pond. Supposedly, they're supposed to pay the water district for the water, the same as out here. Sherman Ranch out here got their pond sucked dry, and then they had to threaten to sue to get the pond filled back up. Like CAL FIRE. Normally speaking, CAL FIRE is fairly easy to get along with, but they have been part of the problem at times. Forest Service, I would say 80% of the time is the problem. And I'm willing to stand up to Forest Service meeting and tell them so, but we're not digging in the ground. I think that's part of this mitigation. Forest Service should be involved in this. Tell us where they stand.
Scott, would you specifically reach out to Tara about meeting? No, not this one. Thank you.
Yeah, in the future, either her representatives or Randy. He's one of our local guys.
Yeah, so I mean, they are on our mailing lists, so they should be aware, but
So it's.
I can encourage
we
them
could
to
ask them.
prioritize the meeting.
They'd like to be present.
Has Hayfork ever considered the idea of a community forest and managing through a collaboration between the local residents and the Forest Service, their surrounding lands?
I can tell you just from personal opinion. And this is not my opinion. This is the people of the community. I have a good relationship with Forest Service. Like to keep it that way. But nobody wants to collaborate or work with Forest Service.
Okay.
I mean, they don't listen, they don't play nice. They say, yeah, 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 and we'll do what they want and tell you you're screwed if we do what we want. And that's,
When we're dealing with these strike teams,
Mhm.
it's a whole other world.
Yep.
With local firefighters are still fighting fire, doing whatever they can, they may not even be in the area, they may be on another fire.
Right.
But these strike teams, I'm just gonna be as blunt as Martac, they would just full on look you right in the face and lie at you. I mean, it's tell you, no, we're not gonna do that, no, we're not gonna do it for a bag, I guess, it's just very obvious what you're gonna prep them for, put down retardant. You got your drone trailer here, you're gonna do a fire.
So- wait a minute, I just realized something that's not on your list. US Forest Service policies and procedures of forest management.
Yeah.
That should be one of the things on your list.
Stop it with fire.
I'm trying to put this, rein this back into what we're on here, and that is actually one of the larger risks in our area. From what happened in Forest Glen, blew over in Ruth, what happened out at 9 Mile Bridge, and like I said, I do not like to cast shade, but I bring it up because it's factual. I witnessed it. This isn't hearsay. I watched them stand in a meeting and tell the residents of Hayfork that they were not intending on doing any backburn. And then literally a county employee said, well, I just drove in and saw you guys prepping crews along the road by 9 Mile. And they like panicked, turned around, whispered to each other, turned back around, said, we're not gonna do any large scale burning, and there may be some real small areas that we're gonna do a little work into, but nothing big. That's where they lost the monument fire across the river. Then they denied, this is what really irks me, they denied to the public in a public meeting that they had any cause in that. When I stood on the tailgate with Division Whiskey and he pointed and said, last night was the last night we had the drone. So we gently dotted this ridge right here along this line and pointed it out, showed me real clearly. And by 9 o'clock the next morning, they were calling Broken Arrow on the radio that they had too many spots across the river and they were gonna have to say that they lost. And yeah, that game of trust, I think, is also one of the reasons they should be tagged on in the perception of risk here is one of our factors. They have done, and I love the guys with boots on the ground, policies and the way they do things have set it up where I look at them as a dangerous animal. I love them. I like working with them, but you never know what's going to happen. They'll literally stand there in a meeting and tell the community of Hayfork, which I was at, that they are doing no burning and that we are bringing in firefighters. These are the boots on the ground guys coming in here, Hayfork, to talk to you guys about what's going on. I had to point out that I was like, look at their shoes. These aren't boots on the ground. Not one of them had fire boots on. These aren't the firefighters. These are PIOs and office people, right? And just the repetitive lying and the lack of trust. And they're not lying. As a whole, the agency has a trust issue. I think has built it to the point that Alaska Team 6 came during Monument Fire and were under orders that they are not allowed to walk around by themselves. They had to stay in large groups because they were fairly sure they were going to get tracked down. I'm not saying they're wrong. I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong here. And I don't like that. This is a sister fire agency that I get along with. I like them and their policies and their procedures and their structures have built a timeline. So, sorry, to round back in, not to just sit there and harp on the same topic. Wildfire. Direct things that I think that we can do that are mitigation based. Keep what we gained during a wildfire. Fuel reduction projects, right? Including prescription fire. And policy changes with US Forest Service and law. Like those are direct in the wildfire risk thing. These are direct things that I think we can do that would have, at least in my community, a major impact on successes how the forest is handled. I'm not trying to fix all of US Forest Service lands. I'm trying to fix the 20 miles that surround my valley. In that thought process, those can have measurable, attainable outcomes.
I'm personally a little bit curious about the community forest, mostly because just having that buffer barrier and some of the benefits that could come out of it. Trust me, I'm all with them. It's my land that burned after they did those back burns. When they set off 9 spot fires, they got 8, and 9th one hit my property, so I feel that one. Going forward, then how do you have that buffer zone? Forestry Service has their policies, and like Cal Fire has their policies, and then Hayfork has their own, and so especially in the community, it almost seems like there's 3 different hydras in a way, and so how do you have that communication to have a unified goal of not only protecting life, but protecting the forest for the future? Because right now, it kind of seems a little bit, I don't know. I still, the one point you didn't say was that day Cal Fire wrapped out was on the way to the Keller fire. They were in their trucks gone.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
and I'll just touch, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or you as well, that I literally was sitting before 9 Mile, listening to this go on. One, they actually called Broken Arrow on the radio. I happened to be filming a call on. As you hear them say, I think we're gonna have to call Broken Arrow on this, we've lost it. And I'm watching it and like, okay, it's pushing. I'm like, okay, River Valley, I know this country, 08, Oak Ridge. I was like, it's gonna push right back into town. So I was like, shit. And I start backing out. I'm looking at the column. I'm listening to traffic. I realize think I need some help back here. So I call up who was my division suit last week. I don't know who it is now because they've cleared out. One division was from Whiskey, which was 9 Mile Bridge, all the way to Junction City was now one division with, I believe, 3 engines on it. But that's how big the division had gotten because it was all blacked out. It's done. They were cutting people loose. They were done. And I called that division suit wasn't even on this chunk of fire anymore, but I had his number and was like, I think I need help. He's like, why? And I explained what happened. He freaked out. I am a peon. I am a local boy who happens to be chief of a tiny agency. How come I'm the one informing him what his co-partner sister agency, US Forest Service, has going on? Forest Service didn't notify Cal Fire through this. It literally, I was the notification that brought in equipment back to start the defense in the Hayfork Valley again. And the fact that it fell on me to do that is ridiculous, right? The fact that Forest Service wasn't immediately reaching out. And that is one of the reasons, these are the things that only reason I bring them up isn't to cast shade. It's to point out why I have such strong feelings and fears about these policies and procedures. I watched Cal Fire above Whiskey Division, above Drinkwater area every night, walk their dozer 5.5 miles down a dirt road to park in a giant safe area. I asked the dozer boss why he did that. He said, because I don't trust the agencies that are working below me right now, that they're not going to burn up all my equipment. 2 days later, Forest Service ran fire to them. So there's a lot of heartburn and distrust about this. And it's an issue, and I think it's a #1 issue that if we can start repairing this relationship, we'll start getting some way different effects in this valley.
So trying to get at least an idea of forestry liaison. How do we have somebody to talk to Forestry Service, to talk to Cal Fire and Hayfork Fire of during the off season, January, February? This has been an amazing water year. How do we prevent next coming up? These were the fire lines, these were the fire breaks from the last year. This is what we're coming up. Because right now it literally kind of seems every time a new team comes in, they're getting orders from the computers that are kind of coming through. They're not listening to local knowledge. How do we improve that communication structure? Because, it is such a rush in those week or two as the fire comes through to hand off all that data. It's a lot of information. You can't collect it all at the same time. How do we improve that workflow? Is kind of what I guess I'm listening right now, because there is a lot of mistrust. I'm coming from San Diego originally, where I have a phone app that immediately tells me, hey, there's an issue in your area, you have an evacuation, this is the GPS coordinates, this is what you have to do, this is your fellows. I can understand for a major county, that's easy to do compared to the resources here, but at least having something that, you know, it's kind of pointing towards. At least those, you know, gathering the assets as possible. So, you know, I'm trying to think of other things to look for that, or look as examples and demonstrations that we can start adopting here and, you know, just kind of mirror off the effort that they've already put in.
Yeah.
So,
There's a couple things that we have already running that can help with part of that. So one of them is the local area advisors. If we get certified local area advisors that are run through the county board of supervisors, those people are then not even more than invited, they are expected to attend the cooperators meeting on large fires and advocate for their community and ask the teams the hard questions.
I think you should do.
And we're the ones that vet that, right? It's you, I think the four of us in this room vet those individuals.
How
And we
often do you
sit
meet
in
with
those
them?
meetings too. So the cooperators meetings are every day. When there's big fire, the cooperators meetings are
okay,
every day.
because
But
I'm more thinking like, if so, quarterly, so the local area advisors start saying, hey, I took a hike up here, this is what I've seen, or is it only during a fire? that you can talk about?
So those are mostly during fire season is when you're working with the incident management teams. Now, outside of that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease at our fire safe council meetings. If people show up at our council meetings and say, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what, and that's how Trinity Center has gotten a lot of work done. Because they come in every meeting and they say, I have this problem, I want it done. What are you doing about it? I have this problem. What are you doing about it? I have this problem. What are you doing about it? Guess what?
Carol's.
Her roads get brushed. Her roads get repaired, right? So we have avenues to help make it happen. But I agree with the policies and that like keeping the fuel breaks open, that's bigger than just us, right? Why do they close the fuel breaks? Because it's sediment contribution. Why do they close it? Because the Forest Service has the largest contribution of sediments to streams and creeks and rivers in the United States, right? And so they're,
So I just want to touch on that. So they very nicely closed all these up. And then with the floods we just had, we just blew, Hayfork Creek is destroyed right now. I mean, there's literally, it washed over High Pond Road in 10 different spots down towards 9. So allowing some sediment deposit due to roads that maybe prevents these larger incidences. I think the cost is worth the gain. So.
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And because
Yeah,
I do
that
hear the
effectively
sediment,
maintaining, right? Effectively and appropriately maintaining the roads would contribute less erosion and less sediment to the creeks than allowing them to be decommissioned and closed, and then that same sediment just moving through the system. Yeah. No, I hear you. I don't
You talk about
disagree.
incident advisors or whatever, I've been around this for a long time. And this all started in 1987. Just like you dropped the sheet. 1987 fire here, we got to finally see how the Forest Service handled the quote fight fire. Burnouts, straight up new, and it's been going that way ever since. No more night burning, whatever. So you go in as an incident person, an advisor, and you try to tell them what you think you could do, the wins. We went down here. His stepdad, Stan, I can list a half a dozen people down there begged not to do what they did on High Pond Road. Break glass. Begged them. They still did. Now those are incident people going down and being advisors, trying to tell them. And they looked me in the eye and told me, so what would you have us do? I said, stand down. You can look at that fire and see what it's going to do. The wind's going to shift, it's going to burn itself out. It will burn itself out better than what you are doing. They don't agree. But they are literally managing the fire during fire season. That is the main issue. And
I see this as data driven, that they're going by data points by some computer that's offsite, that if we get the information from the local advisors into the program earlier, that they can actually incorporate the plan.
and I'm just gonna bring it up because I agree, it's an information issue. But I disagree with, they have access to this information. People are trying to give them this information. People are trying to give them this information in a very clear manner, but they don't want to hear it because they have policies built that say it's too dangerous to fight fire at night. When previous to my time, what you did was hold in the day and you attacked at night. You gained ground at night, and then daytime active fire behavior, that's when you just hold what you got. Now we're running it, oh, it's too dangerous at night, and they're starting to go, well, then we have to do something. So our burns have to occur during the day. We're gonna do a burnout or fuel removal. It's gonna happen during the day because it's too dangerous at night. And I don't know how this road to hell was paved in good intentions, but I don't think they do it maliciously. I think it's policies, liability has driven them down this road where they're cornered in this. And we need to find a way to uncorner them, because I don't know what the right answer is, but I can tell you that we were heard by CAL FIRE during local advisory. They listened to us. They took advantage. I mean, I put them up with some crotchety old Robert Foley's, right? Where I basically said, and I told the CAL FIRE guys that was in charge of this division, this guy's gonna be a pain in the ass, got a lot of knowledge. He's gonna be persnickety, but he knows this land and you're going through this land. You know, talk to him, he'll help you out. I put these together, they listened to us, and I think that had some effect on how effective CAL FIRE was stopping the monument, where and how they did. There's other reasons for that. And I don't think it's coincidence that the end of Romeo, where it turned to whiskey and transitioned from CAL FIRE's southern part of the fire to the Forest Service fire, is where they lost the fire at whiskey, the Forest Service side. I'm not saying that I know what is wrong with it. I'm saying there's something about you as a layman could walk up behind any boss of CAL FIRE having a pickup truck meeting with maps on the hood, sort of stick your head over their shoulders, and they'll actually like part and like, hey, you got any questions? So this is what we're talking about. Take a look. I, in uniform, can walk up to a Forest Service tailgate meeting, and they will fold the map in half and turn around and look at you like, what do you want? Why are you here? And I think that's driven by fear. You know, they're bad PR. They're afraid to have people know what they're doing, and it's snowballing on them. I would like to help them get back to how they should. I don't want to say how they should be. That's like, I know a more open, transparent agency that people trust. And I think part of that has to be decisions made with community buy-in, not just I'm big brother, I wear green, I'll do what I want. Yeah, sure, we'll listen. And then go do it.
So coming back to your tying in about the community forest, so different community forests are formed for different reasons. Some are private lands, some are public lands. I'm sure Mr. Rick has heard a lot about the Beaverville Community Forest, which it was formed because there was going to be a land swap between BLM and SPI, and the community didn't want SPI to have more land within the view shed to do clear cuts. And so the community rallied and asked the RCD to be their steward and work with the Bureau of Land Management to stop this transaction. And it went through. The RCD then became the stewards of the land, and so we actively work with the BLM, and then later the Forest Service added lands into the Beaverville Community Forest to do projects, to build trails, maintain trails, manage trails, do fuels reduction projects, do fuel growth projects, do archaeological monitoring and surveying to do more projects in the future. And it's driven by a group of residents that meets with the Forest Service and the BLM quarterly to discuss the upcoming projects. And there is active logging within the community forest. The BLM just signed off the newest plan for a logging project. Forest Service has taken many, many years to do their logging projects in the community forest. But, you know, there is movement.
Does that gain us what we're looking for? Are you
Well,
telling me that this is a
one of the
potential?
new-
I don't,
One of the
I don't
terms
think
that I
it's
like
all
is
the
view shed.
answer.
I mean, I love the idea of the view shed of Hayfork, of protecting the scenic beauty, because that's one of the things that we've definitely lost with monument, or the view shed. But yeah, how does that kind of get us more collaboration? I mean, I like the idea of some being able to harvest sustainably, being able to actually bring in some timber, so that way, some people around here, we could have the community center and the fairgrounds be access to cheap firewood for, you know, some of the residents around here. That could be nice from the community forest, you know, only pay for itself in a way.
Yeah.
But that is interesting, you know, trying to get that buy-in now of where then do we make that fire? Who has the fire chief hat on and the three agencies? Is that Forest Service then that would be in charge of the community shed? Would that be Hayfork Fire or Cal Fire somewhere in between?
Yeah.
And it's kind of
It's gotta be collaborative.
Right. I mean, it's still, they're still responsible for managing the lands at the end of the day. So during fires, you know,
Yeah.
it's still their call, right? But
Would you have been able to do this if this was US Forest Service? Not the only.
they joined. I mean,
the same.
No, if the land was national forest, would you have been able to sequester a piece of it and turn it into a community forest? Or was it specifically being that this is bought and sold resource land, not,
right.
you see where I'm reaching here, it's just,
Yeah,
Are
because
we
it
gonna
started in Hayfork. I think you have a foothold because it is successful in Weaverville, that Tara would be more interested in seeing it happen than maybe other forests that don't have one, okay?
and Tara has some say in this.
It's kind of going on up here behind Ewing. It's brewing.
Yeah, the Ewing
the,
Reservoir.
Forest Service has got a landlocked piece up there behind the water district.
Yeah.
Which I'm very aware of. Kind of hunting ground in there, but,
Crane
they
Mills.
yeah, Crane Mills. There's an area there that protects a large part of Hayfork, which that would be a good place to start something like a community forest plan. They're putting in bike paths, and there's a lot of work going on there.
Yep.
I'm gonna shut up after I'm done right now, but I have one comment to make on this Forest Service thing. I have been meeting on, insurance people. They have to get involved in this, fire insurance people. They're not involved at all. And so now they're just running scared, probably over a year to 2 years, losing even existing fire insurance policies. Mine were up 25 this year, or even told us going up another 25 next year. So it's either going to be unviable or they're going to take it away. My major issue with this thing with the Forest Service is, and this is it in a nutshell, they are not liable for burning down my house.
Mhm.
And they have pointed back with me in the eye and told me so. They can, a guy named Arlen Craven, who used to be head of fire at Shasta T, this went on 10, 12 years ago, told me, he goes, we can burn down private land to protect public. And he meant it. And, but if I do a controlled burn out here because I'm doing mitigation for fire and I lose it, now I lose my property to the Forest Service. That has to be solved. When we're talking mitigation, if you all of a sudden work an angle with the Forest Service is responsible for the damage they do, they lose these burnouts, this crap starts. That is the only answer until they are liable. Kathy Rose over there lost all of her land over there in Trail Bottom. She was the first big hit that SPI lost. I don't know how much out here in Grand Mountain. Everybody got nothing but getting along their own land. That was it. So until we get the Forest Service liable for the damage they cause, I think we're wasting our time altogether. I can't see it being fixed otherwise.
And maybe that is where I'm at with hitting the transition to SRA land, which sucks because of where you're at. you're not in a transition SRA land, you're stuck in federal land out there. But it's so much easier to collaborate and work with when we start hitting private property or state responsibility area. It just suddenly, it's like you walked into a different country. You propose a great idea and they say, yeah, next thing you know, their boss is emailing you next week. What's this idea? That sounds like a good idea. It's such the antithesis to what we get for Forest Service. And it just boggles my mind, realize we have standing dead everywhere. We have, these issues with beetle kill, all this. I am a volunteer small agency. I asked my local Forest Service if there was an area of either fire kill or beetle kill that I could go up and work with my crew on their saw rating skills and do some falling. Basically, I got told, oh, no. If you were one of our employees, we could set you up where you can do it, but there is no way that I can give you approval to fall any trees. But he did tell me I am allowed to buck any tree out of a roadway that I feel like, because any of the public is allowed to do that. And I'm thinking, the reason I reached out to him is I have plenty of private property to do this on. I'm trying to think, well, if I'm gonna train firefighters to run saw and we're gonna be falling large amounts of tree, let's do it somewhere where there's a value to it, where it benefits another agency or forest or something. So I'm asking them for where this is a possibility. Basically, I got told nowhere. He can't give me permission anywhere. Whereas I can go out with a hotshot crew and ask them the same question, and they'll say, yeah, you can cut down any of these trees you want. I don't care. Granted, they're not the decision makers. They're breaking their own policy. But the principle of that, to me, just boggles my mind. So,
We'll talk in a minute.
yes.
Sorry, there was a different point that I wanted to come back to. Right, I do know that Tara is doing another round of meetings, in the first few weeks in July. I got that into the schedule. I don't know if it's been publicized yet. I have no idea. But once I see it officially out, then I'm happy to share that information with you guys. Tara Jones is the district ranger here.
That's why
You said Hayfork.
That's what,
The publishing schedule.
okay, so if you've seen it, then, give me a second, I'll make it up. I do have the dates.
One of the comments I have, mitigation to me means one thing, and we're sitting here.
This 29th at
Yeah.
the 5:30
Thursday at
is
5:30.
the Forest Service open house.
You there, you?
You didn't get your light?
Oh, so sorry, you mentioned wood, firewood, and bringing it where the community can access it, right? That is something that can be done, right? That's something that's being done in Six Rivers, over in Willow Creek. It's being done in Mad River. It's being done up north. And so if you guys communicate that that's what you would like to see, you want to see decked logs that are easily accessible for firewood, ask. And if you guys have a place for them to put it locally that is easily accessible for them with their large equipment to deposit the logs, and also open to the public for people to come and access the logs, go look at setting it up.
I like that, and I think it's a opportunity that we have to help some of our more elderly community members that can't necessarily go out and cut this wood on their own. Put together service. I bet you can round up Doug Evans, I believe, has a firewood processing plant. I think he probably uses land, the whole mill site. I don't know if that was actually from by watershed or something. The processes. What did you say? U.S. Forest Service meeting? What time?
Friday at 5:30.
You said Thursday, I thought.
Sorry, Thursday
Thursday,
the
the
29th.
29th.
5:30.
Okay, I don't know if Dennis did the survey. I don't know if you came to my meeting last year, but I know that both of you came to my meeting last year. So both of you already submitted one of the hazard mitigation surveys.
Survey based.
Infrastructure communications, appreciative of the new AT&T tower here at the dock. So that way, because my fiance is on Verizon, I'm on AT&T, so it's nice to have two separate networks in case one goes down, because AT&T doesn't have a backup generator, so when we lost power, I didn't have any communication. But my Starlink has been absolutely amazing. So I'm having that as a backup because we're in a valley in absolute nowhere. I mean, we're pulling down 250, no problem sometimes. And that's one of the things that we've talked about is that because it's mobile, that I can take it with me, you can actually drive in the car and still have communication.
Yeah.
So having that as maybe the third option for internet.
And I want to bring up, that's a FirstNet tower, that AT&T tower. So that means that emergency communication comes first on. So during a big event, I mean, the public won't have service.
But the Verizon equipment's starting to get old, and it just needs to be updated with some modern technology for input, because there's a lot of times you get fault off or you just don't have the data that you could possibly have through it, and it just is a system update. I feel like for resilience, it would be nice.
Okay. If you guys are okay with it, I kind of feel like we got deep down the rabbit hole. Drought. Drought. There's nothing we can do about that. Is there any mitigations that we can do drought on?
They raised the reservoir by 9 feet here in Hayfork, which is great, but that's also kind of, just.
What?
Oh, didn't they they got permission to raise the level of the reservoir?
I don't think they have.
They haven't, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about is people running the sprinklers at 3 before a fire, and that just reduces the amount of water used. I don't know, I'm just trying to think about.
Yeah, but that's, maybe I'm looking at it different. I'm looking at mitigation of drought. I don't see, I mean, that's one we can just draw a line through as far as I'm concerned.
Tree reduction?
Yeah,
Felling trees in high areas of.
Waterlogging.
Or, yeah, repopulating and ground covering, areas to hold back water.
I was trying to figure out the history of my property in the 1940s, the 1960s, and even the 1980s. I think RCD worked with Forest Service to do shade canopy along some of the larger waterways, so that way they can actually keep water in the creeks. That could be something that could be deep pools also, just kind of with sediment removal that's kind of come up. Allowing the water to actually not evaporate into green, which is kind of the case in the last couple of years.
Which is one of the reasons Tule Creek always looks so beautiful, is it's shaded, grown over with alders, nice tight banks. Okay. Damn. So my only thought on this, and I didn't see it in the EAP for this, which I just recently reviewed, is there should be a pre-built, and I'm just thinking of a mitigation factor. Pre-built reverse 911 that is first impact, second impact, third impact, that immediately goes out and have that system already built. Right? So you have a Ewing Dam. We'll say we have an earthquake and there's potential for Ewing Dam. Immediately, the nearest quarter mile is immediately notified. And then the second one gives a little more distance. And I don't know these layers. I'm thinking of it as a hot, warm, and cold zone.
You're just building them to go drive.
But having this built,
But
where
it's
all you have
in
to do
a
is say
different shape.
one button.
Yeah, it's basically another layer to code red, where when an issue like that came up, we're still trying to figure out what the capabilities of code red is, so we can add these layers to where,
Yes.
basically right now, they look at the county and they go, okay, we got a fire in this area. We're gonna draw a circle around here. We're gonna go out 1 mile, throw it out there, done.
And
They
there has to be a way to write a little macro program
Yeah,
that gives you a button that you click and sends A, B, and C notifications immediately. Because with the dam, the
This is
Ewing
written- yeah,
Reservoir,
it's
we're
written into the
talking,
EAP. I thought that, I think, did that.
and we're talking, there's an 8-minute window in there.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're talking a real short window to get people either insecure or moved, which I'm not saying I know what the right move there is, when, where, or what. But having something built where there is very rapid notifications there, not even, well, I gotta draw the circle and say inside that, it should literally be a red
it would
button
just-
that you hit.
Yeah,
There should be one for Trinity Dam, there should be one for Lewiston Dam.
Almost feels like a seismometer and a text message that automatically gets pushed
well,
out.
it's like it would be, you just have like Ewing 1, 2, 3 and have the messages preloaded.
Yeah.
And then dispatch,
So-
you just have to click the boxes, click the zones, doing 1, 2, 3, and say go, and then,
So drought, dam, wildfire, flood. I think a lot of this, at least in our area, goes back to fire scars cause our major flooding issues generally. And then the occasional Christmas style floods, the big flood we had in 64. Which I look at is, there's no way to fix that 100-year flood plan, except I can just tell you, I look what you have allowed in commercial cannabis farms in the floodplain valley and think, you're just setting people up for failure.
Well, was it 3 years ago, we were taking butane canisters off of the water road?
Yeah.
Because of, debris flow is one of the things.
We had debris, it crested Drinkwater Bridge during, I guess that was 19, that we had this sort of semi-big blowout. That wasn't even a big flood, that was just a good one. And, we are, due to financial reasons, willing to let taxpayers who want to pour a large amount of money for their commercial cannabis farms build in areas that it all washes down on the my property. And it's one of those, like, if I even get my excavator too close to the creek, I'm worried about getting in trouble, but somehow it's okay. And I put butane canisters, fertilizer jugs, all the garbage off the pig ranch on Pine Pond Road, out of my books is downstream from that. And we allow that. So flood, that's the only thing I think is we could be restrictive about the uses and planning of flood zones. Do I think it's a great area to run? Cattle, grow crops, food, stuff like that. Maybe that is the use, allowing people to build new constructions and homes in areas that you can use. Just the Christmas flood as the example of any house that floated away. You shouldn't be allowed to build a house. Just in my opinion.
But they still have flooding.
Well, I mean, a lot of the houses, I have a friend who lives in one of the houses that floated away, they loaded up, hauled back and put it on the same spot.
Great deal, like that cleaned up.
Oh, yeah, it's great, and it's just a catastrophe waiting to happen. So flood also, I would say, ties back into the dam warning system. Right, river floods, slides. I don't really see anything major in our chunk of the area where I go, oh man, let me freak out about landslides. Earthquake does directly give me a little nervousness, mostly due to dam. Right, that's what earthquake and dam rupture ties together. So I do like your idea. Maybe there is some way. I know we have USPS sites up Tule Creek where they have seismic things. Maybe that should trigger some sort of alert through OES or to the dam operators, all these people that set up, hey, we had a seismic event, we need to check the shit.
I've tried to look at it, but I don't think USGS like in the reporting statement on Trinity River. I think the closest one is on the Humboldt line.
for seismic activity.
100 yards above your property.
But not on Hayfork. That's only on the individual line, no?
The branch just above you.
Yeah.
They have a USGS seismic installed.
Not seismic, hydraulic.
Oh,
Oh, hydro on the Trinity, on the South Fork or for,
On the South Fork, because I tried looking on the South Fork and also tried going down the Hayfork just to see what the water levels were historically, and there wasn't anything that was actually monitoring, and that was also part of when I was looking for the SEMA stations for the weather. There isn't anything in the basically the mountainous region that we pull all of our data through the view of the weather. So, I don't know, just one of
I
those-
would have to double check for hydrology on, but I believe there are 2 active stations. There's
Because
one on
if there's an-
Hayfork and there's one, but for the Trinity,
Yeah,
there's Lewiston,
Okay.
there's at Helena, and then there's at now further, where am I going? Not Pigeon Point, further down, but North Fork has a gauge, Rush Creek has gauge. So there's quite a few, and there used to be one up on East Fork Trinity coming into the lake too. I don't know if that one's still active, but there are actually a lot of old there's a lot of old infrastructure for hydro monitoring, which is no longer in operation because of the cost. And so you'll see that there are a lot of these old monitors and pipelines still sitting out there. Deadwood Creek is one that comes to mind. And, you know, I know exactly where one is on the South Fork too, in Hayfork, like,
I know, I mean, I try to find the markers for the quad trees, and some of them, when you go back and say Caltrans worker visited in 1966, it says in good condition. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's,
but yeah, I can help share some of that.
well, it's just kind of that, what data is already there that we can take advantage of, so that way if the water starts going up, that the people in those areas could get an automatic alert.
Yeah.
That, you know, hey, flood's coming, because, you know, between 9 feet at the high school is something that's not something necessarily something I would have thought of. So.
I don't remember what the numbers are. I could actually probably look at the general plan updates, probably in there as well. But it's something pretty crazy. I think it's like 11 feet around the gas station, and all the way over here, we're still at 6 or 7 feet of water rising above flood.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I'm just gonna keep blasting through. I
Go
hope
for
you
it.
don't mind. I'm just shooting from the hip here as I go. Hazmat. I look at this as large scale, small scale are really only large scale that I currently see, which we'll see what the future brings with, you know, cultivation industries and stuff. But the large scale is fuel spills in our rivers and our waterways. I don't think that we have a good grasp on that, and that we just kind of put our blinders on and just say, please don't let it happen. Please, right? Do I know what our policies are and how to get a hold of the SMRT team out of Shasta County, and that they take 4.5 to 5 hours to get here, and by then it's well past time bomb and we just moved our rivers. I don't necessarily have a mitigation option in mind there, except thinking about something where, you know, people that are delivering in our county, we are awfully strict about pesticide use, about all these different things, but we are just fine with whoever and whatever has gas gets to haul it up here, and whether they know the area. I don't know if this is something that training on their end for a local area is the same driver all the time. You know, give them the phone numbers, just something. I don't have a lot of mitigation.
How long is this mitigation plan supposed to be good for? You said earlier. 5 years.
That's something I wanted to ask you. Do you think you've noticed like an increase in hazardous materials releases within the past
Yes.
5 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dramatically, but not in the scale that we think of as 2,000 gallon
Highway
releases.
36.
I mean, you just take every time, I would say, sorry, everything bad about this every and always stuff and never. I would say 3/4 of the property fires that I go to, be they structure or be they vegetation fire that contain cannabis grows, have large quantities of stuff that shouldn't be allowed.
Mhm.
These things are disposed of in a rough way, and I think it's a large chunk of the population of the cannabis industry, and I am not anti-cannabis. I am very pro-cannabis, but it's been an issue. It goes on all the time, from, you know, issues with people ingesting it to, oh, I'm not supposed to have this, and they just pour it out on the ground, to, you know, I don't even know what's in the ground in these fires that we're working in a lot of the time. I treat it like I don't know, and it's fairly common that that's happened. I can also speak to, you know, just touching on the fact that when the creek floods, what floats down the river, and I see, and it used to be a lot of logs. I would say it's equal part logs, fertilizer jugs, 55-gallon barrels of fertilizer. I mean, it's crap that we don't want in our rivers. And I don't necessarily know how to mitigate that, except, and I hate to be the guy that sounds like that because it's not my MO and I don't like it. When you catch somebody with, you know, Furadan or an Organo phosphate pesticide. You fucking label it all on. You lock them up, you bind them heavily, you make it where, yeah, I mean, it's just become okay. You know, oh yeah, oh yeah, I got 50 gallons of Avid on the back porch. It's like it's illegal in California. How do you have this? How did you get this? Where's all this going? It's being used here. So, those kind of things I would say are much more the hazmats we run into. Not to mention, how many times does a vehicle crash on Highway 36 and gets left there for the next 3 years?
I'm
Because
gonna add to that, what I think, it's not what I think. Caltrans started redesigning huge chunks of Highway 36 for a reason.
Mhm.
And it was public knowledge, and I'm sure you folks have all seen it. It kind of just fizzled out talking about it. But they've been doing these chunks, and when I was working for Caltrans, it came out in Caltrans newsletter to realign 36 to transport radioactive waste from the coast from the battery. That is a fact, and then it kind of scared the shit out of a bunch of people. And now it's not talked about anymore, but they're still realigning the highway.
they're still fixing trucks of it. No.
Straightening the curves and doing whatever, and it's not the only thing that we're transporting over across. We've lost some more rate here on what we call L route, which comes down here 36. And we lost a radioactive trailer over at the Big Fir Tree at Mad River. It was hung up there for 2 weeks, 10, 15 years ago. If you're gonna do mitigation, that's why I asked you 5 years. 5 years from now, with a couple more alignments, you're gonna start getting much bigger rigs on the 36. And then that's gonna turn into an issue. It already is an issue as far as hangups.
Yeah.
But they redid Rocky Point, they redid Dish Gulch. They're real close. Once they get down into the Van Dusen and Mad River, they can start sending over whatever size trailers they want. That's gonna be part of this mitigation. And in my understanding, what we're doing here is we're not here to tell you how to do it. We're here to tell you what we think needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm gonna add one more thing to this Forest Service. I want to ask the government agencies that are involved in this, that all know the same thing I'm saying, what's going on here. So how do they collaborate, these government agencies, to get it to where the Forest Service is liable for the damage they do? Because as far as mitigation, we can't mitigate against that. If everybody gets together and comes up with a way to change this, then we might do some good.
That's what I was saying, getting a forester to put a dollar value per acre to timber loss, I'm assuming the loss of timber value. but that's-
Simply, if they turn the Myers family up there right now, just log their whole place, their cost. That should have been paid for by the foresters. Cut and dry. And Kathy Rose over there. People that drink water. People that got hammered on High Palm Road. This goes on and on and on. There's no recourse, but yet if you are mitigating your private property against fire, whether it be bordering Forest Service or private land, if it enters Forest Service land, you will lose everything you own. Cut and dry, it's been proven. And it's upside down. And so we're gonna talk about mitigation. I wanna find out who all, BLM, CAL FIRE, RCD, but Trinity River Lumber, SPI, everybody get on board. Just gotta stop.
Sounds like a board of supervisors.
It does, that's
Like
what
that's-
would be my thought, is to
They need
Start
to
getting-
take a stance.
getting these supervisors involved. We've got 2 new supervisors that,
Well, and to be willing to take a brave stance and policy that not pointing fingers at Forest Service, but that we start and we build this framework that says, if we as Trinity County determine that this was caused by negligence, inappropriate action, or something, that we will hold the responsible party liable and go after them with all resources within our capabilities in the county, regardless of what agency this is. And so we're not pointing directly at Forest Service.
yeah, I know,
We're just-
Dave, and I'm not real familiar, I'm just kind of touching on this was this new good neighbor authority. If that is anything that, if that's more of a county relationship with Forest Service for other avenues and not kind of what we're discussing here. I really don't know that much about it. It's must be brought up sometimes within the Forest Supervisors meetings.
I'm just looking for angles and avenues,
Yeah.
because I've been batting this around for, ever since 1987. Fought on that fire, cut trees all over, run equipment. This has not changed. We're looking at 40+ years of this has been getting worse and worse and worse. We now have burned 360-degree circle around County County. We've reburned South County 3 times now. We're gonna do it again. And there's just no recourse for burning down private property, private timber. You know, I would think if all the agencies got together, the agencies, the insurance companies in particular, they need to be brought into this. Because they're the ones having to pay the bill. That maybe we can make a change here. By just griping and talking about it, well, this is going on every year, rah, 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 that's not gonna change it. Everybody's got to gang up.
Having the
Go after
insurance
it.
policies. Expect the funding to come from the US Forest Service to pay for the lost homes when an escape backing fire is what causes it, or, you know, suddenly, I think you will get reaction out of the Forest Service, maybe not what we're
You
intending.
look at what, I mean, every time PG&E's, you know, is caused a fire, they have no problem going after them because they're a private.
But nobody
can
can
get insurance.
But nobody will even look at thinking about approaching Big Brother
Yeah.
or US Forest Service. And I think that we kind of have to change that, because I don't think Big Brother Forest Service is purposely putting themselves in that position. I think they've been put there. Now it's just habit to muscle around and do that. As soon as we start putting some things that actually aren't flea bites on them and are aggressive dog bites, they will start reacting differently.
I think the other thing, and I know that I don't think we're seeing a lot of it here right now, but Six Rivers is, they're not closing their fuel breaks. They're leaving more of their fuel breaks open. And their intent is to do prescribed fire with those as their control lines, right? And I think I'm just trying to find how I can help more than just advocating, right? Because that's,
I have something to add to that. It's, my mother was Forest Service career. Half of my family was. I find it rather unique that from one ranger station to another, you got total difference in management of the forest. They are the model management of Forest Service, matters. And probably downriver would be next. And this area here in Harrison Gulch, been upside down for years. And so how can you have one government agency managing all of these, and then every ranger district is completely managed? You can claim wildlife, water, timber, wherever, but that district over there is still logging. I mean, they're doing everything, and we're doing nothing here. So it's, I don't know why that is. I can't even come up with a decent answer on out of the blue on that. And so when we're trying to beat what we're doing here on the fires, it isn't these ranger districts. It's during these fires. They totally lose control of these fires. The ranger will look you right in the eyes. We have no control of this fire. Once that incident team hits the ground, that's where the control is. And they come from God knows where. So,
what could be done? But back to the hazmat, there could be a plan set up to get, they're called sediment curtains, but they're buoys that can also catch other chemicals. But you could get those and pre-station them at bridges or other key points and then have a notification system that says, hey, there's a spill, have the volunteer fire department go pull that out, put it across the river at that bridge and leave it there until hazmat can show up. And that can at least delay the
Yes.
spill or
Yep.
decrease the amount going down. But I think that's something that you could bring to environmental health.
Yeah.
And say this was brought up at a meeting and, you know,
And I would,
volunteer fire departments are interested in protecting our
Well, what happened
resources.
up Ditch Gulch here, what, 2 years ago, Leroy? Three, yeah. That just was mass confusion. Nobody had a clue what to do. Imagine the stream feeding Hayfork Creek, Salt Creek, and in the South Fork. They did finally get it, you know.
No, that's a good idea. That's, that's the kind of thing that I do is to find
Right.
these kind of things to fund, find ways to fund this stuff.
And, Rouse State Creek, South Fork through Forest Glen is major. We've had numerous trucks go off on those in the past. Especially.
Just look at, yeah, just even just 299 in general.
Yeah, 299,
So lucky.
wrecked with that. It's-
So it's just, yeah, and we have no idea how much is coming across there.
No.
Why do they spray now? Same thing. Regular bigger trucks.
It's another creature is coming, is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not it, it's just.
I was part of the Cantura loop
Yeah.
when I first moved here. So, yeah, that was.
I like I don't know why that never clicked. Like, imagine, 100 yards downstream of major bridges, having a pre-set up boom system. That if nothing else, we're picking up oils, petroleum products, the floating matter.
Yeah.
Or having a plan.
Yep.
Well, and that's what
About.
that's what mitigation really is. I mean, we've talked a lot about, what can we do with the Forest Service and this and that. When it comes to mitigation, it's reducing the risk. You're not trying to reduce the fact that we're gonna have wildfire. Yeah, it's still gonna happen, but can we reduce the risk and reduce the loss of life and property? That's the whole key to
And that,
mitigation.
going back to that, that's where I go, keeping what we've gained through previous fires,
Oh, yeah.
fuel reduction and prescription fire, which I think Watershed's done a great job of
Yeah.
pushing and coaching and teaching and PBAs and the Tara that did some of the prescription fire laws in California that's been working. Leonard Quinn. Yeah, her, stuff like that, these voices in our community that are starting to take some of the liability out of safe prescription fire, certified burn losses so that you're not going to be held negligent if you follow these simple steps. And taking what is an old an old farming technique around here. I mean, the Rourke Ranch and, Mirasons have been burning their property forever. It's like taking that and bringing it into the new age of, you don't have 200 years of experience behind you. How do we educate this gentleman right here to be able to do safely prescription fire and fuel reduction on his property? So I think those three things are top notch on wildfire side.
Yeah.
So I'm just real quick, just because I wanted to touch on each one of these, and it's funny, your list matched exactly mine, and my list pretty well matched what I did in the GPU update hazard section 10, whatever. Except that we didn't have loss of communications. I will bring up, we do have an airport here. It's small planes. There could be, issue there. Is there really mitigation to be done? Yeah, I will say, you realize our airport's been robbed now, like I would say 3 times in the last 6 months. Our gate still doesn't open and close. The gate stays unlocked and you just manually roll it open.
And it's not plowed during snowstorm.
And what happened was,
Biggest airport in training camp.
So I just took my pickup truck through there and did a loop trap, made a big circle so that there was a clear spot for the ambulance, and left, closed the gate. What happened is people came in drove that circle, got out, broke into the buildings and robbed a bunch of stuff and drove out of the loop that I made. I have mentioned this numerous times that we need cameras at the airports. We need to maintain that. The gate has been broken now for 2 years. I think this was well before your time that this was brought up.
Yeah.
And it was sort of one of those, oh, well, you know, that sucks. And I don't know who it is that manages that side, but it used to be an electric keypad gate. Everything was always locked up, and for the most part, that kept people out of it. I think a little maintenance to our airport definitely would help mitigate the risks associated with that. Be that lighting, be that locking gates so that people feel safe leaving their aircraft there and stuff. That was a simple one, small, I would say low on the priority list, but something that's easy to develop measurable, attainable mitigation factors. Loss of communication. That's a huge one up here. I honestly think the mitigation on that is education of the public. I don't think that's the reason we live here. If you don't want to lose communication, live in the city. You live in the woods, you're gonna lose communication. Get Starlink, right? Maybe this is something that part of our local public safety facility or our fairgrounds with the evacuation zone has 2 Starlinks set up where they can have communication and notify families, and it's for the people that are here to be able to use. Something like that, but I think the biggest thing is education,
Right?
education of the public that flood, fire, earthquake, severe storms, infectious diseases, even just fire camp going into your town. Chances are you will have 0 communication. Gone, done. And you should, I think the mitigation to that is educating people to that fact. Having this pre-planned that like, hey, if something happens, recognize you're not going to be able to call your kid at school or call grandma over here. You're going to have to plan differently, because I don't think that there's really any simple way around that for the general public. On our side, I think, you know, making sure that we have backup ham systems and, you know, the things that I've seen you putting in place gives us a good ability as first responders to figure out how to, what do you call it when you link my radio up through a ham system out of the back of your truck?
Oh, yeah, there's a,
Simplex? No, there's
no,
a
it's-
bridge
Yeah,
that you can build that lets, even if our towers go down, my radio still works as an emergency responder because you've set it up as a mobile. Yeah, and I did talk to, I think it was you about, there's a company that they just bought a bunch of these down south as part of the FirstNet.
yeah.
That
Yeah,
we
you showed me the trailers. and things.
Yeah, that you can order trailers that all their battalion chiefs down, this is city talk, but their battalion chiefs actually have this little box that goes on the receiver hitch of their truck. That in a big event, their battalion chiefs, it is a cell phone tower in a box on your truck. So it builds a network based on fire engine goes out there, fire engine going out there. They're building a network while they're out responding.
It's a node-based communication.
Yes, and it's built for emergency events when during a flood, we're gonna be out all over the place. So the nodes automatically disperse themselves through the emergency event. So infectious disease. I would say education. I mean, that's,
So everybody's already so remote out here, it's especially it's one of those towns, especially watching when you started thinking fire camp coming into town, that was the biggest thing. Just 100 with people from everywhere all of a sudden coming into town. It's just kind of such a point of spread that could be, but I mean.
Hand sanitizer at the pump, right? Everybody has to go to the
we
pump.
had
In
a,
your mitigation, you know why Cal Fire doesn't put a camp here? Because there's no hotels. Because all their firefighters now, after so many hours, get the motel up shower. Talking about mitigating for something, that's something, you know, so now they drive 70, 80 miles on their shift. Yes. And then the other thing was, didn't have enough with Verizon, what have you, do your time sheets. So throughout the county, that's something we're talking about with CAL FIRE. And Forest Service has the same issue, but they bring in their own tower right here.
Yeah.
Their fire plant.
And I think that's something as a county, we could probably put a little heat on Verizon. Like, are you gonna let AT&T come in here and take over your range? You have the infrastructure, it's built. You need to make this available for what we're gonna use it for, not typical use, max load use. Some way that they hit the turbo button and we're sucking up more bandwidth, but allowing, because currently when fire camp comes here, it literally, you cannot make a phone.
Verizon's newest 5G, 4G, you can take 400 megabits per second per user. I mean, right now, we're limited at maybe 12 to 15. So yeah, when fire camp comes through, maybe we lose all of our pipelines, which is kind of annoying.
To the point you can't even make a phone call. You press send and it'll just sit there for 30 minutes, not doing it.
Is there a camera accessible to you on Hayfork Bollard that you just look at?
No, but there is a lookout.
Well, there's a PG&E camera that's like kind of a time lapse, but it's more of a time lapse kind of thing, and I was more wondering just time for smoke checks. One of the first things I started hearing about, especially in Quebec right now, is zombie fires. And they've been starting to send up little thermal drones, $800, $1,200 thermal drones they can send out dust. You start getting these little spot fires. Up here, it's a little bit difficult to actually go out, cover all that area, but are there cameras available that the local firefighters can possibly just, instead of driving up all the way, hey, at least it's in this direction, or hey, no, this smoke's coming from over here, kind of guide them a little.
So that's,
Because PG&E's got, I mean,
It's a time lapse.
but that's a
Yeah.
great one. I like what you're talking
we
about,
have
like
access where you can actually.
Plumber Peak,
Yeah.
Hayfork, Bali.
Aren't those the
and maybe
ones
up above the
submitted to the
mill
Forest
area, right?
Service to get put up?
And make it where it's logged in to by emergency personnel only. Where you can log in and point it.
Yeah,
I think that's a great,
at least.
But I think the
smoke check.
cameras are, I don't know if they're all installed. Some of them are still in the process,
Oh, really?
but and there used to be wildfire alert, which was all of the United States fire cameras sitting up on lookouts and ridges all over. Now California has their own, and what is it? Is it Alert California or Alert CA? Anyway, California has its own wildfire alert website, which is only the wildfire cameras in the state of California. And so it's the full network, and so you can go in there and click on them. I don't think you can move them. I think you physically have to call someone and say, hey, move it this way or that way. I don't know who controls that part of it, but there are certain ones that cover opposite directions. So like when August Complex started, right, they all just pivoted towards the August Complex so they can look at that. And then if another spot fire came up, then they pivoted, so somebody made a call and got them to move it. I don't know if
Use
it,
your own lookouts.
yeah. It might be like Reading Dispatch and Fortuna Dispatch that have the controls to move those things.
Well, the ones that I've seen are north and south on Hayfork Bollard, run by PG&E, and it's a wide angle that the best you can see is when the brush fire starts coming up. You can see kind of it in the distance, but also being a web stream, maybe a best 720. So if you really want to pick out smoke on those pixels, it's difficult. And it's not a lot of lookouts that you could do that. I mean, the Plumber's Peak would probably be the easiest with the data infrastructure already there.
Yeah. So,
Also, it's alert CA.5.
oh, thank you. Have you heard about the Trinity County Collaborative Group?
Just heard the name, I don't know.
Okay. So it is a FACA recognized group, which means that the individuals that are participating in that group are approved by the federal government. But that group of Trinity County residents is the group that is tweaking, commenting, providing feedback to the Forest Service on what projects they're developing, designing, and implementing. It's, I would say, providing influence in that group that is sitting monthly, bi-monthly with the Forest Service designing the projects could be beneficial. Having, and right now they're looking to expand it. It's a very, I would say it's a small group right now. And I would encourage more diversity to participate in that group to see different projects, but.
It's mainly Weaverville folks right now, some community center.
Well, I think, who lives up on, Horse?
I think Stan either.
Oh, wait, no, you're talking up on Horse Ridge. I think I peaked.
Yeah. Is it Larry Glass?
No, but I know who you're talking about because he was very
He could be
active
on
and
it.
vocal. He was very active and vocal during that fire.
But anyway, so there's, yeah, there are a lot of Weaverville folks in there. There's a couple people from other places. But I think that would be a great place to prioritize some of these projects and also prioritize the style of implementation that you want to see. You know, this group came out with a recommendation many years ago of 70% canopy cover. If they pretty much. Can I stop recording? Anyway, you can read their whole white paper. They have it online about, you know, why they want to see only 60% and above canopy cover retention, which is to prevent the mass fuel growth after it. But then what they're finding out of like the Browns projects in the community forest, that if they target 60%, they're getting above that. They're not actually seeing enough canopy removal to allow for growth, to allow for increasing the stand. And so, you know, they're starting to come around and say, okay, well, maybe we'll look at 50%, maybe we'll look lower.
This is Trinity Collaborative Group.
Trinity County Collaborative Group. So it is facilitated.
Okay. I see it in the paper. I'm gonna look it up.
TCCG. The RCD is the facilitators, but it is a federally recognized group that advises the Forest Service on what projects and implementation they want to see in the county. So, you know, promoting Hayfork, promoting prescribed burning around the basin, promoting leaving open the fuel breaks. Those are conversations that can be had at that meeting. You're going to have regional folks listening in. You're going to have
Perfect. This is great.
SO
This is
folks
the
looking in. You're going to have
mitigation
local
here. Like,
people.
That's stuff I'm gonna look into and I wanna.
Part of one of the things I was thinking about with.
without forming a community forest.
Fuel breaks,
Yeah.
for helicopter landings.
Mm.
One of the things that we have out here is that if an ambulance can't get ready in time, where's a helicopter land? And for some of the accidents that could happen kind of out in areas,
Mhm.
having some of these fuel breaks, but then also being used as a possible helicopter evacuation zone could also increase safety, arrival time, you know, just
Mhm.
getting patients too, because, you know, there's also been times of just trying to locate people out there. So I'm saying, hey, what road are you on? You're at these GPS coordinates. One of the programs that I've seen started to be implemented is drones carrying defibrillators. So that way, at least you get the person, they have, you know, if they have somebody with them, do defibrillators really start the process. Trying to identify where somebody is out here though would like a nightmare. So I'm just trying to think of the implementation of that. Canopy and shaded, I started thinking about for drought. I started talking to Amelia before she left about how much trees do you take in canopy to retain snow coverage, about what that kind of optimal amount was.
Mhm.
And that was kind of an interesting side conversation that we can start talking about here, like how much tree canopy is actually too much to, you know, maintain our water.
Right, yeah, so there's the theory that, you know, opening it up instead of having snow get caught in the canopy and stay up higher and then burn off faster, then it's gonna come down into the ground and it's gonna hide in the shade, right? We all know that when we go on shady corners, they're icy, they stay snowy the longest. And so it's promoting allowing that snow to come down and hide in the shade so that it stays put longer, and then it helps provide this longer, slow release of water into your system as well. And so I agree. You know, there are a lot of ways that we can support the fishery, support the frogs, support the other species by taking action, because your null action, not taking an
It's an
action,
action on its
is an action and can have further adverse effects.
I mean, even further, my oak pastures are completely fine, but anywhere that there was pines, fertile. So that's kind of one of those other things that just historical knowledge have been told that pines weren't supposed to come this low. So, you know, just getting out to have, you know, the oaks there and the white, I'm just trying to, you know, selectively trim that way. It's been something else that, you know, I'm now starting to work towards, at least on my own property. So education is trying to have a little bit more.
Which you find interesting, we're reverting back to what we did 100 years ago.
It worked.
Man, what's been done with
We're doing now,
grass,
doesn't
right?
it?
It's, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't work.
All right.
Cowboys
Um,
tell you that when they brought the cows into the fall, every cowboy drove a case dog behind.
Oh.
You know, my dad's the last of the cowboys. Used to get out Indian Valley, down in Bald Hills.
Yeah.
South Fork area, every cowboy had a little case dog, and when they were coming in behind, they did it up. If
No,
they didn't do it, all this.
go anyway.
How do we get back to it?
But it is interesting how we're here, what we're talking about, we're actually reverting back. It's too bad, shouldn't be messing with what we're.
The only other things I really had came back to education and outreach through the county, and that would be both the infectious disease and severe weather.
So,
Hail's been one I've been recently concerned about.
oh yeah,
North County's been getting nailed with these size, it sounds like.
well, I mean, did you see what was happening in
Just
the
didn't
other
hear-
side of the United States? So I always like to ask this question because we struggle so much with how to do that, right? Look, how many people are here? Okay. A lot of people move here to disengage. They move here to not be disturbed, to non-engage, to non-interact.
But then they went with the power goes out and their cell phone doesn't.
Property values are where it comes from me, of being able to say, hey, you know, we have defensible space. Farmers insurance will actually come back and insure it here, because that's the new thing right now, is that more farmers insurance and most people insure any new property in the state of California. State Farm's pulling up. So, I mean, I'm trying to think, you know, for me, it's kind of that, like adding the property value, adding to resilience. It's not just, you know, and then adding to recreation, getting people out there, because having the demonstration forest of like, how do we attract people up there when we don't really have a hotel? You don't really have the fairgrounds has been absolutely amazing, but again, it's camping, which has been the hard part. So how do I, you know, demonstration forest, or at least, you know, the campgrounds recreation.
Leroy,
So-
are you doing anything up there? Are you having a booth? Are you doing anything?
My intent is wearing blues, having a fire engine. Getting out.
Come over to us. Hang out with us.
Bring
Let's do
the,
it together.
This is what, did I text the wrong?
Yeah, I
Numbers
didn't
you
receive
this
a
morning?
text. I didn't receive a text.
So
So just while you're,
I went off of the same number that you called me on last week, no, a couple weeks ago, Wednesday about the radios.
was it a 628 number?
I don't know, so I can't check the phone on it. But you should have these at the station, these know your zone.
Okay, I think yes, I do have a.
Yeah, every
established list.
station should have
Yeah.
them. I want to get them, at least get them to the fairgrounds, so when I talk to people about code red,
Yes, we can bust those out.
yeah,
And
that was what my text today was about.
gotcha.
But, you know, I wouldn't have, no.
And that's another thing eventually, you know, finishing the public safety facility, I would like to have material access there. I mean, I always hear, you know, oh, if you do this, everybody's gonna steal from it. I can't describe how many vehicles have computers sitting out on the seat, unlocked for 12 hours, and we have yet to have meth heads steal from us. And I think we work well in the community as far as, you know, we have a good working relationship. I would like to make material accessible, basically everything that you guys hand out from Blue Dot, from Code Red, Ready, Set, Go, have these things set up in one location rather than, oh, well, some of it you get here, some of it over there. a big display at Hayfork that is grab one, take one information, because that gives us the opportunity to also then, when we have pertinent information, have a place to put it, right? Where
Would you
people
want like
are.
a signboard out front here for fire, like upcoming event?
Yes, but we have to think about how we want to do it, but yes, infectious disease, and this, I wanted to touch on this, Hayfork classically does not do well with being told what to do, right? So what we could do though is just manage the allowance of large events. You can't tell people in Hayfork that they have to wear a mask. You could just not let the fair happen, or fire camp happen, or a big reggae festival happen at the bar. And that would probably do 90% of your desired infection control without, because the second you say you have to, you're gonna get a lot of middle fingers and people trying to purposefully do the opposite, just to prove a point. And I think the severe weather thing, going back to that, that's a tough one. Because I'm a weather junkie. I am always looking at where they're coming from. This match is patterned 40 years ago and it's gonna feel like this, and I'm always playing that game. I'm amazed at how few people think about these patterns and how they change and what happens on a local level.
Mhm.
And I don't know how to make this a public accessible thing unless there's a way to get 290, which is an intermediate weather for fire,
Mhm.
meteorologist into a Facebook page that is constantly going, bouncing around, discussing current local events on weather. That's the only way I could think that you would even get people like, oh, this is hear what this person has to say. And that's a tough one, because if they talk too high, people are gonna glaze over and tune out. They
Sounds
talk,
like you need to have Wayne for a weather spotting column in the editorial section.
somebody, not me. I like the weather, but I'm not a meteorologist junkie.
Okay.
Thank you guys for having this.
Well, I
Hopefully we
appreciate-
gave you
yeah.
something pertinent.
It's a good start
Oh, you
for us.
did.
This
Feel
is
like-
our
Good.
first, this is our
Thank
first,
you.
you know,
This your first one or how many?
5.
We
Yeah.
got one in each district.
I'd really be curious to know how it comes off in South County, where you going there.
Yeah.
Most people have been hammered down.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. I just.
Yeah.
I'm
So
really
you should
wondering where
prep
they're-
your diversion.
You might draw a bigger crowd.
How to rein
They're-
this in.
they're
when we
pretty
get
good.
So sucked into Forest Service, because I imagine that that's gonna go on for.
Well, they attend. They're very engaged, you know, we got Nancy Curran, you know, they're so well integrated into the community.
Over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're fine with their local district, they don't
Yeah.
have any gripes there, it's when the teams come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hammered bloodthirsty. So,
Yeah.
did anyone ever talk to you folks about the solar system?
Yeah, that's,